Welcome back to Weekend Express. Time to take a look at what's making headlines on the dailies, as well as taking a look at the week in review, a look at the major stories that have been making headlines for the better part of the week. And in studio with me for this conversation, we have Bob Okode, who is an independent candidate for the Butula constituency parliamentary seat. We also have a High Court advocate, Ndegwa Njiru, as well as the MP aspirant for Roysambu constituency, Honorable Lee Mushiri. Many thanks for joining us, gentlemen, on Weekend Express. So let's begin with what's making headlines on the dailies this morning before we get to the top stories of the week. And on the front page of the Standard newspaper, mystery murders stalk candidates. And this is news that has really shocked Kenyans this week. We've seen the children of Kapsoya Ward aspirant James Ratamo. 3 children of his now have been found dead after missing for more than a week. We've also had a very vocal Baringo MCA, Thomas Minito, who was also found dead earlier this week. And this is also surrounding a lot of politics that is going on. Let me begin with you, Bob, especially being an aspirant in this year's election. Is this something that elicits fear for you as an aspirant?
Thank you so much, Michelle. First, this kind of murders needs to be condemned in the strongest terms possible. With or without politics, innocent lives should not just be taken away. Secondly, I do not want to believe that this happened because of politics. There could be other underlying issues. So, to me, we need to have this investigated. But for now, let's condemn this. But again, this does not change anything. If people have decided, they have decided, with or without these murders.
I mean, what does that mean? If people have decided, they've decided. And Ndegwa, do you think that this is possibly linked to politics? Because these are all politicians that we are seeing here.
Yes. May I first of all pass my condolences to the family of the 3 kids and the MCA from Baringo, and say that what is coming out even from the media is politically connected. It has some connection with politics. To me, I think this has to do with how aspirants are taking the whole aspect and how they are looking at it and why they are going into it. First of all, you realize this time round there's been a lot of serious contest among parties, either seeking to become an MCA, wanting to become an MP, a women rep, and all that stuff. And again, the motivating factor is that politics has become a means of earning a livelihood, in the sense that people want to go into politics not to serve, but to create wealth, and as a means of creating wealth. So for that reason, people will do anything to make sure that whoever stands in their way is cleared, to make sure that you get what you desire. So to me, I think this has much to do with the way we are packaging our politics, the purpose of politicking, and the purpose of the election. That means then that we need to look at this aspect of politics and decapitalize it and make it much more very unattractive, so that you do not go there as a means of making or creating wealth. You go there for purposes of service. If you ask most of those aspirants who are contesting, even these ones who are here now, and you ask them their policy and their agenda, whether from the Jubilee or from the NASA function or even from the independent people, I'm sure not many will come up with a policy. Can I just surprise you that, and I know that might be a topic, that yesterday I was reading from the papers, and this is the time that Mike Sonko is saying there's a team of technocrats working on my manifesto. So even by the time he was going to present his candidature, he had not thought of his manifesto. He doesn't know what he needs to do to the people. And equally well for everybody. Even when you ask either Jubilee government or you ask the NASA function, none of them has come up with a concrete manifesto. And all I'm saying is that they are going there as a means of creating wealth and making livelihood.
And all of it gets lost in the thick of it. And that story continues. A special report on page 10 and 11 of the Standard newspaper. Tears and pain as aspirants, 3 children, as well as an MCA found murdered. And on page 11 there, a report on how the ward representative's death has triggered protests in the region. Lee, maybe just to get your thoughts on this, especially considering the fact that 79 days to the election, you want to focus on having peace in the run-up to the election.
Peace, I think that is the language that should now, we politicians should be focusing on. And let me join my brothers here by sending my personal condolences to the family of the bereaved people, and say, God forbid, if it is really connected to politics, this is the worst scenario that I would imagine in our country, and of course, this age in time. Not getting lost on that, it's an interesting scenario. If we look at the kind of interest that people have gotten in the matters of running of this election, you will see there is too much interest. There are too many people who have come up for elective positions in various positions. And this tells you that there's a lot of interest, a lot of competition. And we can't rule out the fact that in that interest, like my brothers have said, for those who are newcomers, would be seeking for jobs. And this is a job like any other. And therefore, those with the bad intentions would think eliminating their opponents would give them a free ticket to their positions. But all we are saying, let us approach this matter on a sober, and remember that there's tomorrow after, this life after this election.
A very unfortunate situation there.
Yeah,
all right, gentlemen, of course, our condolences to the families of the deceased. But let's move on now to page 2 of the Standard newspaper. Fresh hurdle for Paul's team as the ballot tender nullified again. So IBC has hit yet another roadblock here. We've seen now last evening the tender process for the supply of ballot papers has been nullified once again. This is a decision by the Public Procurement Administration Review Board, which has termed the stopping of this tender process as a result of flaws in the tendering process of the documents. And the leader of the board, Paul Gisheru, says that the procurement team, IBC's procurement team, completely bungled these tender documents, that they cannot be used anymore, and the process has to be started afresh. Ndegwa, let's begin with you, especially being very well versed with the Constitution. We're 79 days away from the general election, and remember, when we had an open tender process, it was also reversed because of a similar issue. And now the Public Procurement Administration Review Board has given IBC a decision to choose. It's the easiest way for it now to choose to pick a tender or a company to supply these ballots. Where do we go from here? 79 days. Is IBC going to do this?
I believe these are tests of the preparedness of IBC in light of them being able to deliver a free, fair, and transparent and accountable election. Because all these are the infrastructures that support an election that is credible and acceptable to the people. And preparedness is one part of the election. And I remember sometimes back when we were discussing about the issues of the party nomination, we said that the question of logistical preparation is one of the most important component and infrastructure that supports the whole process of electioneering. So this shows the unpreparedness of IBC and the inability of the IBC to follow simple rules. Because all what the board is telling them, you guys brought up and floated a restricted tender, but the bidding and the bidding that was done was that of an open tender. That is pure professional negligence by the Secretariat of the IBC. And the surprising thing is, and this is where we should probably begin to get worried, is when they start setting signals of this nature, and knowing how volatile and our political terrain is, they are trying to create some bit of suspicion and there's a bit of suspicion in the way they are prepared to deliver an election. And that is going to give people and wither their hope whether this commission really is prepared to deliver a credible elections in light of the time that is remaining. And of course, I remember when we were trying to revamp this team and get Isaac Hassan out and get the Chebukati in, we said that the biggest mistake that happened was that the commission was left without any institutional memory. And I keep on reminding Kenyans that when you were doing the transition from the interim independent electoral body commission that was led by Isaac Hassan to now the current IBC, one of the requirements in the transitional clause was that we required to have people who had worked previously in the interim independent and electoral commission so that we can retain some aspects of institutional memory.
Right.
So Chebukati has come into a new house. He doesn't know where the plates are. He doesn't know where the cups are. The people who are inside the house do not even know what nature of the carpet and which doors are and how many rooms are in that house. So for them, they're just having like a headless chicken or a cat in a dark room.
I mean, let's get your word on this, Bob. Do you agree with Ndegwa that IEBC doesn't still seem to have its house in order, or are they on the right track, especially as an independent candidate? Do you have trust in this commission?
I do have trust in in the commission, but just before I say that, just to clear my conscience, Mr. Njeru here, sorry for this, just alluded to the fact that we get into politics to accumulate wealth. Njeru is also a judge. Why did you get into that profession? To die poor? No. Some of us get into politics to serve. And where I come from, if it has to take someone's life for politics, I would rather not vie. Now, back to your question, Michelle, IBC has had many hurdles. This is not the first one. And I can assure you, before the polls, during the polls, and after the polls, they'll still have hurdles. And it is my faith and my trust that the kind of a team we have, they'll be able to overcome these hurdles. Yeah.
All right. I mean, Lee, let's hear from you, especially with the nullification of the ballot tender now, just 79 days to the election. Do you have trust in the IBC?
I can say to a level of 80%, I would give them credit. Like my friend has said, Chebukati has come to a house that had a lot of squabbles, a lot of problems here and there. And within that very short time, he has been able now to steer clear of politics of intimidation, politics of tribe and all this. And he looked focused. Just like any other institution, we cannot rule out some handles here and there. Like a house, mine or any other. We can't rule out some handles here and there. And that one, I believe, part of it is what we can see
being happening now, right? But Ndegwa, what does this mean for the timelines as we head to the election? Because IBC also has clear set timelines in the Constitution as to when which process should be happening. Are we well within that timeline?
We may be well within that timeline, but the question is, all these logistical preparations must happen within that particular timelines. There are issues of budget in issue here. The question is whether, if IBC is going to be put into a marathon to make sure that they deliver a credible elections, whether if now a tender is cancelled, whether that tender will have some implications in terms of the IBC budget by floating it again, by starting it all over again.
Right.
All those are some of the issues that we need to look at. Will IBC then be telling Kenyans that for us to be able to deliver credible elections, we require to be probably a supplementary budget of this and this amount of money? There are so many things involved. And then I'm thinking that it's a high time that Chebukati and his team concentrates in making sure that they deliver a credible elections. The quagmire they find themselves in is that the former commission that was led by Isaac Hassan set some particular dates. And these guys did not have any control of those deadlines. So they have to work within those timelines. So all what they have to do is they have to put their house in order. They have to up their game. Kenyans are looking upon them. If this country bans, like the way almost banned in 2007, remember the accusation were on Kivuitu. God rest his soul in peace. Banok Chebukati must be able to rise up to the challenge. Remember, and we do not want to criticize him, we hope that he's going to have the capacity. We have no previous history or story of where he came from. Just giving an example with Mike Sonko's running mate, we have a history that he has been in corporate world. So he's trying to bring some corporate picture into the whole aspect. Where did Chebukati come from? Where did the other commissioners come from? Did they have such kind of magnitude to work on? We believe Parliament vetted them on those merits. So they have to up their game and give confidence to Kenyans that they are able to deliver a credible election.
All right, and we'll be waiting for them to do that. But let's move on. Page 3 of the Standard. Please rescue our son. A family pleads after seeing an Al-Shabaab video. This is a video that has been making rounds on social media of KDF soldiers who are now in the hands of Al-Shabaab militia. And the KDF soldiers are now pleading with the president and the government to withdraw KDF troops from Somalia. And of course, the authenticity of this video really cannot be verified as to whether the soldiers were saying that from their own will or they were being forced to say that by the KDF soldiers. But this has elicited a fresh debate on the issue of withdrawing our KDF troops from Somalia. Lee, let's begin with you. This has been a very long debate. The president has remained adamant that we will not withdraw our troops from Somalia. We will not negotiate with terrorists. But looking at this report and seeing that chilling video, is this something the country needs to consider?
Lily, the country needs to consider this factor on other aspects other than withdrawing the soldiers from Somalia. Because withdrawing the soldiers from Somalia means an act of cowardice, and that means then we'll have given in to our enemy. So what we need to do is to be smarter, to try and get smarter than the enemy, so that we beat them in their own game.
Right.
This is just part of intimidation, and they are known to do that. There are many other videos that don't reach the light of the day, so we don't know. But I believe our government, our troops are up to the game, and we are going to defeat the enemy. Yes.
Bob, I'm sure you've also been following this conversation quite closely. Families are now pleading with the government, bring our sons back home, negotiate with the Al-Shabaab, bring our sons back home. Is this something, in your view, that the country needs to consider?
Okay, thank you. In my view, Michelle, let's not use one isolated case to make a collective decision. I'm very sure the decision to send troops into Somalia was bigger than we can imagine to sit here and talk about this. Then I hope we'll not end up politicizing this. This is beyond politics. But again, as my friend has said, using just one isolated failed case shouldn't overshadow the successes that have been made by our troops being into Somalia. Yeah.
All right, Ndegwa, let's get your thoughts on this. Why is it such a quagmire? It seems like a catch-22 situation that the government is finding itself in. How do we get ourselves out of that?
Well, thank you. I may not really want to regard this as an isolated case because I want to look at the plight of this family. And you can actually see their faces even on the papers. So each family is unique in terms of how the whole process affects them as a family. Remember, it's not the whole country that mourns. It's that particular individual family that mourns when they lose their dear ones or when they get to see such kind of videos. Whether the video is true or not, we may then want to interrogate ourselves as to what was the military objective when Kenya got into Somali. And what deadlines and timelines were given in terms of achieving this military objective. Because a troop cannot just go somewhere without a particular military objective. If then we have been able to cover that military objective, then is it our time to exit? And the unfortunate thing is this. The Constitution requires that periodically Parliament be updated when our military and our troops are having an engagement of this nature. Unfortunately, we have never had any report coming into Parliament to update Kenyans on how far we have gone. You know, these days, the whole aspect of military engagement with our new constitution is not a closed society thing as it previously used to be. We are then saying that Kenyans are entitled to this information. Maybe it would ease the anxiety if Parliament would be seized of periodical reports on how far our military and troops have engaged with the whole aspect of fighting terrorism. And these periodical reports probably would be having even timelines when we expect our people to exit. Because unless Kenya is in occupation of Somali, there must be an exit clause.
Right, of course.
Like what's happening in Gaza. In Gaza Strip and the West Bank, the Israelis, they are in occupation. So in an occupation situation, you do not expect to have an exit strategy. But in this time, if our military objective was to restore order, put in a government in Somali, then we must be having an exit strategy.
Right, right.
And I believe this exit strategy, if expounded to the Kenyans, then this kind of anxiety would be able to cease. And probably...
It's important to point out that we have seen a decline, so to speak, in the number of attacks that we've had in the country. That is something to laud the government, especially security forces, for.
Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen, let's move away from this and I'll focus on a bigger debate that has been going on in the country, and that is page 4 of the Standard newspaper, the Unga puzzle, and why maize farmers are also queuing for the 90-shilling flour. On page 5 of that, residents worry as a cheap flour quickly runs out of stock. Now, this is in most parts of Taita Taveta. We've also seen residents of Baringo complaining that they're afraid that this subsidized maize may not be able to get to them. And while it is, the government should be applauded, really, for bringing down the cost of maize flour, a lot of politics still surrounds this. In fact, when you read here the special report, the first line here says, maize is deeply politicized in Kenya. Every meal of ugali effectively has a political dimension. Bob, let's begin with you. Since this Unga debate and the Unga puzzle began, in terms of whether a lot of politics was at play and whether the Kenyan was played for a fool here, because we're seeing maize farmers also complaining that this is not sustainable for them.
I'll be very brief on this. And the Unga puzzle actually is a reality to me. Where I come from, Unga actually means Unga for me. All right? The only politics that's coming into this is, yes, we have a problem. The government is out to sort the problem. It only becomes politicized if things are not adding up. If from step A to C, we've not seen a B.
Right.
Okay? That's when politics come in. But there's no problem when there's a crisis for government to come in, import maize, subsidize the prices. That is okay. Politics only comes in when things are not adding up.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And the issue of things adding up is what has been the topic of debate. Lee, let's focus on the fact that just earlier this week, I did speak to government spokesman Eric Iraithe, and he was very categorical to point out that there's a big difference between governance and politics, he said. And he said governance is that there's a drought and the government has stepped in and done something about it. Politics is who imported the maize and who is responsible for the rest of it. And that's where he left it. And that says a lot, as it is, about the entire process, which was meant, as is the constitutional right of every Kenyan, to be free and transparent.
Let me say this for free, because Kenya, we are known to just talk and not focus to the root cause of a problem. In Kenya, truly, and I can say this without an iota of contradiction, that there are many unscrupulous business people, do I call them brokers or whatever they are, who hold some commodities to make a kill for a certain period of time.
Right.
And this has been known. If we shift from Unga and talk about sugar, we've had artificial shortage of sugar. Why? Because some people want to have a kill from a certain place so that they can enrich themselves. And this is devoid of some very influential people. and we know them.
Right.
The government knows them. Why are they not dealing with the root cause? Because I believe even today, there's a lot of maize out there held by some guys somewhere just to make a kill for reasons to make money.
Right.
It is simple and clear. So nevertheless, I want to encourage and applaud the government for the quick action that they did. Kenyans don't want to know where the maize came from, who imported the maize. They want to see a plate of unga, ugali on the table. That is what we are concerned. And what they did, the urgency, the quickness, and that was smart.
Right.
For us, we appreciate.
Is it really that all Kenyans should be concerned about Ndegwa in terms of the credibility of this process? Because the way it happened also raised a lot of questions. And I agree with Lee that sometimes we seem to miss the root cause of the problem. And he says very categorically that people are known who probably in government who've hoarded some of these commodities.
Yes.
But this brings in the question as whether we should have the debate of really having a law that no politician or government official should conduct business with the government.
Michelle, sorry for interrupting, and you can see the passion I have when it comes to
Ugali.
It surprises me to hear Mr. Lee Mushiri say Kenyans don't want to know who
Yes,
imported.
because Kenyans need to know.
How it is very irresponsible of you, unless you're here to pursue the Jubilee agenda. But we need to know who imported, how much, when. We need to know. That's why politics is in this. Otherwise, we'll just keep quiet.
I really want to ask my friend whether he really listened to what I said. I didn't say that we didn't want to know who really imported the maize. I said it is not important at this time because people are hungry. What we need is to put a plate of ugali on the table. And then we go back again and try to see. Like I have said,
when will it be
there
important?
are people known.
It is not important now.
Close board. You remember there was the issue of maize again. Katika serikali ya nusu mkate. And we knew what transpired. I'm not trying to shield them. I'm saying the root cause of the problem is those who are creating an artificial shortage of maize so that they can make a kill.
Right.
So I accept in the first place, but I say now, at this moment,
let's deal with the maize shortage first and the food shortage, and then deal with the rest.
Kill our people on politics.
Now, the problem with that is many times when we seem to sweep things under the carpet to deal with them later, they are completely forgotten, and that is how they disappear. Look at the case of Josephine Kafura. Nobody speaks about that issue again. So, Ndegwa, how do we begin to deal with this situation while still keeping the important bit important that Kenyans still need to eat? Very briefly.
May I begin with the question of civil servants and government policy formulators doing business with government, or rather, you remember, I think it's 1963, when a session of people was presented by the then governor, Duncan Ndegwa, before the cabinet, Kenyatta's cabinet. The whole agenda was to make sure that you Kenyanize the businesses that were in the hands of the people who are exiting, the Mzungus. So the whole idea of people doing business with government was premised on that question because the people working in government then are the people who had the control of the capital. So there was the good idea to make sure that now to decolonize the whole aspect of Kenyan economy and give it to the Kenyans. That's why the session of paper was presented. But the unfortunate thing is that since then we've never been having an opportunity to review that session of paper, whether or not those virtues and that agenda that was being propagated by the governor, Duncan Ndegwa, by then are still viable for us in this Kenya today, vis-a-vis the changing political environment and the economic environment. Now, coming back to the Unga issue, it is a question that Kenyans deserve to be told as to where did the maize come from, why was Parliament summoned in a haste to work on the taxation aspect of maize importation, and then within 2 days, a ship docks in Mombasa, allegedly bringing maize from Mexico. The question is, this maize and these subsidies that was used to subsidize, the money that used to subsidize the maize belongs to Kenyans. It's not government's money.
Right.
It's our money that government is managing on our behalf. And therefore, it is apparent that Kenyans must be told. I think it is important for now Kenyans to begin reading the Constitution clearly and realize the objectives and the principles enshrined under Article 10. And one of the principles is a principle of transparency and accountability. Because why this country went into the dogs for the better part of its life is because Kenyans never cherished the virtues of transparency and accountability. And you can see here what Mheshimiwa Ali is saying. Nyinyi kuleni mahindi kwanza, alafu tutajua ilitoka wapi baadaye. And then you can see, I remember an interview that was done to the Deputy President by Anne Kiguta. And it has actually been repeated by Barack Muluka at page 15. And it goes like this. Kiguta says, where is the maize from? The Deputy President answers, we are being trivial. It does not matter where the maize came from. Kiguta asks again, this is an accountability issue. I will ask again, where did the maize come from? And I need an answer. Then what does the Deputy President say? He says, I think this is a very unfair question. What is important is that the maize is here.
Right. So that is...
That's not all things.
It's very important.
Why is the Deputy President developing cold feet when people ask him where the maize came from? Why can't you just tell us, this maize came from Kitale, this maize came from Kisumu, this maize came from Sudan? Why is he not able to give Kenyans an answer?
Right.
He's a Kenyan worker.
Of accountability. And we will continue that conversation in just a moment. But let's take a short break here on Weekend Express. A very able panel in studio discussing the top stories and making headlines this week. We take a short break, but stay with us. When we come back, we open up the phone lines and let you take part in this conversation.